You're very welcome back to the Daily Rundown with me, Fiona Fox. I have the fantastic Wendy Olsen and the fabulous Stephen Armstrong helping me with the news this evening. Now, France's ban on the burkini has been challenged. A top court has heard from a human rights group and an anti-Islamophobia association has heard that they argue the bans, they argue the bans are in breach of French law. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Earlier this week, a video of 4 armed French officers forcing a woman to remove her burkini went viral, sparking debate over the moral and legal implications of the ban. Even former President Nicolas Sarkozy has waded into the discussion, saying that the burkini is a provocation that supports radical Islam. Now, several women have now been fined in France for wearing the swimwear. So lots and lots of mixed reports and mixed opinion on this, rather. And what do we think about it here on the Daily Rundown?
Well, there's lots of layers here. So there's a layer where I think good for the women. They've gone ahead and gone on the beach with the burkini. I mean, I can cover my head. I quite like to. So if I cover it, no matter how I do it, it's not going to offend you or upset you. It's an expression of my choice in terms of style. So I think good on the women, because they've gone ahead and gone on the beach with the burkini on and with the other clothing that's similar. There's a lot of different kinds of swimsuits on sale now in the shops. There's 3 pieces, there's these long shirts, there's mixtures.
And that's not obviously there's people on the beach fully clothed as well. You know, people choose to sit there fully clothed. So how do you feel about this in general? Do you agree that it's a militant or a political statement to wear a burkini, as has been suggested?
I mean, statements don't have to be militant, do they?
No, and some of them are just. They just. I mean, I personally, I went on holiday in Tunisia a fair few years ago, before this was an issue, and saw ladies wearing what I now know is called a bikini. My first thought, and it may not be a correct thought, but my first thought was how much I really liked the Half a Sixpence film, because they all wore proper full length swimming costumes, and they had the knees to the elbows.
I don't know the film. What year was that from?
It's from the early. It's meant to be set in like the 50s, and so everybody was big frilly, swimsuits and stuff like that.
It's almost like a dress.
And the gentlemen were wearing what I can best describe as like similar to what the rowers wear nowadays, but again in full cotton and everything like that. For me, I mean, if you juxtapose what France have done with what Scotland have done today, which is to add the headscarf as part of the uniform for their police force. So if you look on the flip side, France have tried to ban it, Scotland have welcomed it within their police force. I think that I found it more worrying to watch armed police make a woman take off her clothes on a beach. That to me is disrespectful to women.
Can I just explore the layers there, because the woman actually cooperated with the man. Of course, we all saw it immediately on Twitter, and she cooperated, and she would in a dignified way she removed a layer and explained what her outfit was. Now, some of us would find that humiliating, and I think there's a battle of the genders going on at the moment where women don't like to be told what to do by a man, and we would have, a lot of us in Britain would have felt very uncomfortable to obey. But that woman obeyed, and she may actually go home and obey, and she's comfortable with that. So the layer here is that if people embrace the way their society works, the way their mosque works, the way their proper behavior, the way their dress sense works, it all fits together for them. You can't just attack that. And when you do, you don't make yourself popular. So whoever that local council is, they will have lost her vote. She's sitting there obeying. Her husband will be furious at the police, but her husband's view may be, you should do what the police say, but when I get hold of those police and those politicians, we will absolutely be. They should start to really demonstrate.
It's an extremely uncomfortable scene to watch, though, wasn't it?
Only for you.
No, you don't think the police to come? You don't agree? You didn't feel uncomfortable to watch a policeman force a woman to change her clothes on the beach?
I totally disagree with it,
really?
Right? But she didn't leave the beach. That was what was interesting. She didn't leave. So you got to think that through and think, well, why didn't she just get up and go? A lot of us maybe would have felt ashamed, but I didn't perceive that she felt ashamed.
Can I just ask, and do you mean that we are making more of it than perhaps that woman will have? Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think so?
I think that we can sit here on our... So personally, I think if 4 armed people were stood around me, my first thought would not be to get up and leave. I think that another point that has been made is this there seems to be a move within France to totally sort of completely de-religiousness or complete secular society.
No, that's gone back for many years.
Yeah, which is
3 or 4 decades.
Which is one thing. But I mean, French law. If we look at French law, I mean, technically by French law, there is no capital in France. That is part of French law, is that you cannot have a capital. It's against the ideals of the French nation. We all know they have a capital.
But isn't the point that you're making that they have a constitution? They have a written set of laws.
They
so
do.
If this is against the law, it will be clear. The court will just get hold of it.
No, but I think
they don't have a pluralist society. What they call a secular society is where this one set of laws is supposed to apply to everybody. And I think they're going to have to reconsider the way their constitution is written, because what we really need is to be more tolerant and allow these, small subgroups to have their own dress code. We see it in Affleck's Palace here in Manchester. We see it with skateboarders.
I would say
it's
that
okay.
I would say that it's not at the moment. It doesn't seem to be across the religions. It seems to be focusing on the Islamic religion. It seems to be more sort of things like that. And I think that the idea that it's Nicolas Sarkozy who's come out and said this, a former president who has announced that he's going to run next year for the presidency on a strongly conservative leaning sense of it. I think that it's dangerous to do this because if we live in a world where we have to accept that there are radicalized people on both sides of this viewpoint, and in a world where, as we will talk about later, we have a man who may become the most powerful man in the world who has literally no idea about the words that come out of his mouth. I just think that we are giving more and more, leaning towards giving information and an ability for people who want to speak to disillusioned Muslims or Christians or Jews or anything like that. We seem to not be speaking to the centre ground. We seem to be pandering and giving these people who want to kind of go, look,
the system's unfair.
Look at what,
you need to radicalise to get outside of it, or even internationalise. I mean, ISIL is very international, and it attracts people from, say, France to work with people in other countries, and it's not a good idea, really. They should be forming their social groups within France so that they can, so that they're able, and especially young people, learning to mingle and to go ahead and get along. Even if you're in the street and you see a group that's different from you, you shouldn't really feel scared or belligerent. You should be having those feelings.
Of course we shouldn't feel like that, but some people might think that France is having a very reactionary movement at the moment.
Some French.
So, of course, based on what's happened in France over the last couple of years. What's a better way? What's a better approach? I mean, we kind of seem to ask this question over and over, don't we? Obviously, you can't just tar everybody with the same brush. Obviously, it's not the entire Muslim religion that is at fault here. How are we going to work towards a situation where, we can tackle this together with the Muslim population?
I actually think in Britain we have a good approach to it, because we do let people express themselves. I think we do fairly well. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe you can challenge me.
Well, but Wendy, can I just jump in and just say then, would you be uncomfortable then if you did see a policeman here in Britain, in Manchester, Piccadilly Gardens maybe, insisting that a young Muslim woman,
I'd be right in the police officer's face.
Right.
I would be like that, saying, just to stop bothering her, I'll take this to the mayor. I would absolutely oppose it. But the thing was, in France, they have this written constitution, and they have these local governments, and the local government had passed this clear law. So in the face of that, for them, which we would never pass such a law, I really don't think it would ever happen in Britain, because we are quite pluralistic. We're quite mixed, and there's been a lot of mixing. There's families that cut across two religions. There's a lot going on here that we tolerate, and so I would have been straight up to the police and say, that is out of order. It's just unacceptable. And I wish that French had. I mean, there was a lot of Twitter feed about why didn't other observers actually come up and say to the police, go away, go and sort yourselves out with something that's legitimate, and then come back on this beach. But they didn't. They sat quietly, because there'd been this very clear law passed locally. So it's a kind of decentralized localism.
Sure. And is it something that you would ever imagine down the line that we could in any way veer towards in this country? Doesn't we be worried about?
I've been at bus stops when buses have driven past when, you know, the only people at bus stops were of a certain religious group. I can't suggest that it was definitely for that reason. You know,
What, and the bus doesn't stop?
Yeah, the bus doesn't stop. I was in my local shop recently, and the phone rang. The gentleman picked up the phone, and quite clearly, the man on the other end of the phone was being horribly racist to him because he asked him to never call that place again and put the phone down. Now that happened in the city in which I live. Less than a month ago.
So it's happening in the land and property rental market. So if you try to rent or buy a house, there is racism in that, in the way the networking happens, and on the phone and through references and deposits. They play a little game, and they can manipulate the ethnicity and religious background of the people who can move in. So the agencies play a role there. But
so,
I think
it's something like you can imagine a law like that being passed here.
No, in Britain it could be passed. It could happen, and especially as we get more decentralised. But I think it would be based on ignorance. So let's take an example, right? If I cover my face now and I start speaking like that with my head covered, now this is something very controversial at the moment. And, you know, my voice isn't muffled, is it? No. You can hear me perfectly well, and you know me, so you know who I am, right? But this is used by Muslim women when they don't know the people. It's precisely for when you're in the bus or when you're, you know, going up to the bus driver to buy the ticket. And I believe that some non-Muslims are very threatened, and they really want that to be banned in Britain. But it's based on not understanding what that means. It means two things. First, being modest. So for them, it's a way of being modest and not revealing their beauty. So it shows that they respect their own beauty and their own attractiveness. So imagine now I'm hiding something lovely. And honestly, that's the vibe that I get from it. Is, oh, let's look at her eyes and let's look at her shoes and see her. You still see the dress sense from behind the clothing. But the ignorance is not to understand that it's also what they call a battle. They call it a battle because she's trying to overcome her own urges. So a lot of women have the urge to wear makeup, jewelry.
Sorry to jump in anyway, we just have to go over. You kind of feel that which we kind of inevitably come to this conclusion more and more, just more understanding is required in the situation.
More understanding of Muslim lifestyles and how diverse that is.
Great. All right, great. Thanks very much for that, guys. We're going into our second break. Don't go anywhere. Still lots more news coming up here on the Daily Rundown. We'll see you soon.